Welcome back to Language, Culture, and Dr. Lou, where all we do here is explore language and culture. And of course, today I wanted to do another update on this situation that we see going on in Alberta, Canada, where there is a separatist movement going on. And the big question is whether Alberta will separate from Canada or not through secession. And I know that I did my last update on this about 2 weeks ago. And I know some of you may be sick of me talking about this all the time, but so much has happened in the last 2 weeks between last week and this week. And I really felt like we had to really go ahead and discuss some more. And so I guess just for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about so far, is this has been going on, well, grabbing headlines for over a year now, since pretty much right around the time of that the Liberals won power again in the federal election last year. Which to me is kind of interesting because back then I noticed a big patriotism, if not nationalism, finally coming together in Canada because we had, well, President Trump bullying them from the South. And and that seems to have, well, fizzled away a little bit in the sense that now it's all about Alberta separatism. And this is not just in the last year that separatism has been a movement in Alberta, because this has been going on for well over a century now. But it's a lot of momentum this has gained in the last year. And the first time I did a little story on this was way back, well, a little over a year ago. And and we have a lot of things going on since then. And what's happened since my last update, pretty much we have, last time I did an update on the story, it was because we had said that, I had said that a temporary injunction had been put through in court in April, which had said they couldn't certify this petition, even though the separatists had turned in well over 300,000 signatures. I think a little over 301,000 signatures to be more precise. And yet the court said these signatures cannot be verified, so this petition cannot be certified to put a referendum on the ballot because it's unlawful. And that was in response to a lawsuit brought by a couple of the First Nations bands up there, saying that, hey, you're violating our treaty rights just by proposing a secession from Canada. And so a judge agreed with that, and they put a temporary injunction on it. And so the big news last week was that then all of a sudden the court stepped in again because Elections Alberta had allegedly been seeking to verify the signatures anyway. And Danielle Smith seemed fine with that. So the court stepped in again and made this injunction more permanent, saying, no, this petition cannot happen legally. And at that point, the Alberta government had said, okay, well, we're going to appeal this. But that takes a long time. Appeals take a long time, so it would be long time. And so until the decision has been overturned or anything, the separatist petition really can't legally go through. So that was a big thing last week. And then it got even more spicy this week. And oh, thank you very much for saying you're loving the story. And so the story got a little more spicy this week, of course, when first I noticed um, on Wednesday you had there is an opposing group, the Federalist group, we'll call them, and mostly anti-separatists, called Forever Canadian. There's the Forever Canadian campaign going on. And then on Wednesday, um, Thomas Lassick was presenting his opposing petition to a committee, and the opposing petition is just it's not asking a binding constitutional question, so it wouldn't be burdened by the court's ruling about the separatist petition because that one was considered constitutional and therefore binding, and binding meaning the province would have to act on the referendum results. And so his petition putting, again, this was the Forever Canadian group, their petition going through was just, do you agree that Alberta should remain in Canada, right? And so very similar question, but said from an opposite point of view. And so that group, Forever Canadian, like I said, the separatists had gathered over 300,000 signatures, and then the Forever Canadian group seems to have gathered about 400,000 signatures. And so then it turns out neither one of those petitions is being honored. Neither of those referendums will be on the ballot in October because last night, Danielle Smith, the premier of Alberta, made a big announcement, and just to go on about my impressions about Danielle Smith and her role in this whole thing. I think that she has been. I don't think that she herself is a separatist. I think that she has been appeasing the separatists because she owes them something because many of these folks are in her political base, and so they helped get her into office in 2022. And so I'm thinking, yeah, she owes them a little bit. And also I'm thinking she doesn't actually want to separate from Canada. She more wants to use the threat of separation to give her some leverage in negotiating with Ottawa, right? And that seems to have worked to a certain extent because as Danielle Smith brought up in her announcement last night, in her address last night, um, she had been making deals with Mark Carney, well, the government of uh, Alberta, along with the federal government in Ottawa, had made this energy agreement even, and this was something she very much touted in her address last night, and so good for her. I mean, I guess doing good work on that front because she finally got approval for them to build a pipeline to the West Coast, which is something that she's wanted for a while now. And but what's weird is the announcement that she made last night sort of contradicts this because in order for this pipeline to go through, right, they've got it's a couple $1 billion pipeline, so they're going to need a lot of investment, a lot of finances put into it. And according to the agreement they made with Ottawa, which is, I think, also called the MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, people are calling it that. Anyway, they would have to have all the plans for the pipeline worked out and to Ottawa by September. So it's sort of weird that the announcement she made last night was about adding a question to a referendum question to the ballot that's going to happen, the previously referendum ballots that were announced for October 19th. And so for me, that's interesting because of what the proposed referendum question that she's adding to the ballot, that they decided to add to the ballot, along with 9 other questions that are going to be there. Um, and it's, I think they might have thought they were being clever constructing this particular referendum question because it, again, would be a non binding referendum, according to Danielle Smith and her announcement, anyway. So that means the court rulings on the separatist petition wouldn't really apply there because it wouldn't, this referendum question that she's adding wouldn't automatically trigger separation. And so, what was the question that she's adding? It's not the separatist question, which would have been, do you agree that the province of Alberta should cease to be part of Canada to become an independent state? That would have been the separatist question. And it also wasn't the same as the forever Canadian question, which is, do you agree that Alberta should remain in Canada? Right? She sort of did some tailoring and did sort of put the two together. So this referendum question, it's not so much a yes/no question as it is multiple choice, picking between 2 options. And so the full question, as she announced it, will be, should Alberta remain a province of Canada, or should the government of Alberta commence the legal process required under the Canadian Constitution to hold a binding provincial referendum on whether or not Alberta should separate from Canada? So that's a sort of tailored question, and I think they tailored that on purpose so that the court rulings wouldn't apply because it wouldn't be a binding referendum, this question alone. And I also think Danielle Smith might be trying to appeal to both sides, trying to make both sides happy, but I don't think either side will be happy with that. Anyway, for me, I thought, wow, so you're just kicking the can down the road. Now you want to have a referendum on whether you should have a referendum? That to me sounds kind of like a waste of time and money because you already have 700,000 signatures of Albertan citizens on this issue. So I don't think it's a question of whether enough people want a referendum or not. Although the Forever Canadian question is more kind of trying to avoid a referendum on cessation, whereas the yeah, please, no insults in the chat there. Anyway. And also, I can't really help it. There we go. There we go. And anyway, so as I was saying before I got distracted by the insult there, please no more, well, anyway, please no insults and please no name calling. And also in the chat, please, I'd like to hear from you on this topic. Please stay on topic. That would be great. I would love to, if you make some relevant comments or questions, I would be happy to bring that into the discussion. But anyway, so now we've got the Premier of Alberta trying to sort of kick the can down the road, saying instead of having the separationist referendum, which is held up in courts, and she said they're appealing that, or having the Federalist question, the one about staying in Canada, put on the ballot. She's tailoring this other question into, let's have a referendum on whether we want to have a referendum or not. And again, I think it sounds like a waste of money. I mean, it costs a lot of money to put that together. And interestingly, since it's not a standalone referendum, since there are 9 other questions going to be asked on the ballots, I wonder how people's interest in the other questions on the ballot, their motivations maybe for coming there and voting on one of those or multiple of those questions, I wonder if that would actually impact the results of this referendum question. That to me is pretty interesting. And yeah, and so I had to sort of bring this update to the channel just because all this transpires within the last um, 10, 11, 12 days, within the last 2 weeks anyway. And for me, I kind of feel bad for Danielle Smith in the sense that I think it was kind of political suicide to put a question on the ballot that's not going to appease either of the sides, in my opinion. Um, but then again, she's really between a rock and a hard place. I mean, she, I think, owes the separatists some things. In fact, that's part of the group who put her into office. Although the United Conservatives, that party is not specifically a separatist party, right? And she didn't exactly campaign on separatism. It was more about getting Ottawa to give Alberta their fair shake and whatnot, and to work with them, give Ottawa a little, I mean, give Alberta more autonomy. So that makes a lot of sense to me. And yeah, I don't know. So I really don't know how this will go. Now, does anybody have uh, any comments? Anybody in the chat have any comments that you would like me to address or anything like that? I would love to hear them. I'd be happy to. I got my screen here to kind of read them off of, read them out loud. And I don't think it was clever of the government of Alberta and Danielle Smith to put forth a question that's not um, a binding referendum question, so therefore I could avoid the court issues going on with the Stay Free Alberta referendum, well, at least for the petition for that one. But it's funny to me that neither of the citizen initiated petitions would end up being the one that ends up getting put on the ballot. To me, that I don't know. It seems like you're trying to appease both sides, but you know the old adage where if you try to make both sides happy, then nobody's going to be happy, right? Anyway, that's just a thought. And oh, and another spicy piece of this story that came out last week was the ties between um, a U.S. ambassador, Trump's envoy to Canada, anyway, and his ties to an app, a voter ID app that has been in the scandal of, okay, one of the groups that pushing for separation, pushing for the separatist referendum is the Centurion Project. The Centurion Project, who the big head honcho of that, I think, is David Parker, who, if you had been following Alberta politics lately, or let's say even a couple of years ago when Danielle Smith got elected, all that, you probably know exactly who David Parker is. He's a conservative political activist and all that. And so the U.S. ambassador who endorsed this app, okay, and I will get to the thing about the app in a little bit, but his name is Pete Hoekstra, I think, or Hoekstra rather. I didn't know the name of this guy or who the heck he was before this story came out. And so he has actually endorsed the voter ID app. It's called 10 times votes. It's written like 10x votes, but I'm pretty sure the X is for times. and it's a voter ID app. And so through this app, I think it was, that the Centurion Project got a hold of the list of electors of Alberta. And so that has cast a stain on the separatist petition, because remember, none of these signatures have been verified yet because the court stepped in and stopped the verification process from going through. And so there are some people speculating about how okay. Anyway, sorry, I'm trying to follow along with the chat a little bit. Um, and so they got, so then again, this is a separatist group who has been uh, involved in the collections of these signatures and all that, although we're not talking the Alberta Prosperity Project, or it's the Centurion Project. But um, this guy David Parker, who I said, one of the head guys there, he's been fined over $100,000, I think $120,000 over this, because the electors list, the Alberta electors list, got leaked to him. So now this means that one of these separatist groups has had for a good while now, some say about a year now, um, but I'm not sure on the exact amount of time, but they had access to an online database of Alberta's voters, names, addresses, I think maybe even phone numbers. Anyway, their data is out there. And so there's been, data breach pretty much. And so that's why some of the people who are opponents of the separatist petition have speculated. I wonder if some of those signatures are forged, if they made them up because they already had the data for all the voters in Alberta. Now, I'm not saying I suspect that, but I'm saying I've heard it raised quite a few times over the last week or so, but only pretty much by people who seem like they would be opposed to separation. So that's a thing. Um, wow, that's weird. Um, anyway, please again stay on topic from for this topic, unless of course that comment about cocaine has to do something with the separation movement or the petitions. Then please elaborate. Um, and so yeah, that's the big pickle that Danielle Smith finds herself in right now, is that she's putting a Alberta elections, and she had decided to put this other petition question, other referendum question on the ballot, which is pretty much kicking the can down the road, just saying, um, should we or should we not have a referendum ballot, a separatist referendum ballot in the future? So to me, again, it seems like she is trying to walk a tightrope, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of the separatists don't band together, and I mean some of the ones within the United Conservative Party, right, band together in Alberta and sort of kick her out as leader of the party. That would, I think, remove her as the premier of Alberta, so she might end up losing her job over this. But getting back to this referendum petition being a bad thing for the energy deal that Alberta just struck with Ottawa, if they have to come up with the plans for the pipeline by September. And yeah, she just announced last night that they're having a referendum in October about whether or not to hold a uh, separationist referendum, a referendum about whether Alberta separates from Canada or not. what investors? I don't see investors coming through and funding that. It's going to be like $1 billion, $2 billion pipeline, and investors don't really seem to like uncertainty. So, who's going to come fund a pipeline when they don't even know what country that pipeline is going to be in at the end of the day? Right? That to me seemed like yeah, seems like a really good question, and it seems like the idea of kicking the can down the road and letting this uncertainty really continue seems like a bad move because at least if a referendum happens on the soon side and not just a referendum about do we have a separatist referendum or do we have a federalist referendum, either way, do we have are we planning to have a referendum on whether Alberta is going to separate from Canada or not? Um, That to me seems like it's already been answered by the hundreds of thousands of signatures they've gotten on two petitions so far. And although, again, the separatist petition is still being held up in courts, um, but it doesn't seem like it would be a good idea to keep on extending this time of uncertainty. I know that this is something that um, well, is currently a problem and has been for the last 30 years or so in Quebec since they had their last separatist referendum, right? This has only been done twice in Canada before, and both times were the province of Quebec on voting on whether to separate or not. And the first time was after a push in the late 70s, so the referendum itself was in 1980. The second time was in 1995. Hold on, excuse me. and and Quebec has not really benefited that well economically from this because let's take the example of BMO, the Bank of Montreal. They're one of the largest international banks, at least in the hemisphere anyway. And you would assume, just hearing the name, that they're based in Montreal, that they're headquartered in Montreal. But guess what? They're not and haven't been a long time. They're in Toronto. And why is that? Because of all the certainty of the Quebec secession referendum made them think, no, this is not a province where we can have our headquarters. And so there's been some sort of economic or well, financial malaise since then in Quebec. And I don't think, and I don't think extending this period of uncertainty before a referendum is cast uh, is doing Alberta any favors in recruiting investors. I think the risk, in my opinion, would be are you chasing the money away? Are you chasing all the people who might invest in this project away? Because if I'm a big oil investor right now in North America, if I were in that person's shoes, I'm not sure I would be thinking, oh, yeah, a good bet would be to bet in Alberta, where we don't even know if that's still going to be part of Canada next year or not. Um, as opposed to if they wanted to invest in, let's say, Alaska or Texas, right? Both in North America as well. Yeah, so I don't think that's going to do any anybody any favors anyway. So that's it. Um, yeah, so I don't know. I think there's a lot of angles to consider. And I am going to keep on following this story. It's amazing how much Canadian media I've been consuming lately because I just can't, I can't get over this story because it keeps end up getting more and more twists and turns. And I feel bad for all the people having to live through this exactly right now. Free Alberta. Thank you for adding that comment. That's every point of view here is valued, and and by the way, you're not alone in that opinion, right? Like I said, hundreds of thousands of people who have already signed a petition that way, and many, many more volunteered and made the case to their fellow citizens and all that to make that petition go forward. Anyway, so very cool, and thank you for being here. Anyway, and so I don't know. I think yeah, that's a big question to me. Do you think that it's possible that um, Danielle Smith will be out of a job in November for upsetting her base by, putting this uh, non-binding petition on the ballot that only seems to kick the can down the road? I don't know. To me, that's interesting. Um, yeah, I understand that. You're saying I will read that aloud. They're tired of woke tard government that's been in power for 11 years. That's right. I mentioned at the very beginning of this that I think the uh, separatist movement got a lot more momentum going towards that when the liberals won in power again, even though folks have been so disappointed with them for a good decade before that. Yeah, that is a very good point. Very good point. And and so now I think that yeah, I think that Danielle Smith is sort of she seems to be riding the fence on this, but I don't think riding the fence is the right word for it. It's more like she kind of is the fence. Like she's kind of wants to be able to use the leverage of a threat to secede in negotiations from Ottawa, but I don't think she actually wants the separation to happen. Which means she is not really a separatist herself. And when people start figuring that out about her, they might end up turning against her. Um, Actually, yeah, that's a valid question as well. Why can Quebec have a referendum uh, for independence but not Alberta? Like I said, this did not work out very well for Quebec. It might have given them a little leverage in negotiations with Albertus, but it did scare away a lot of businesses. And by the way, uh, some of that big business went to Calgary. So Alberta was kind of kind of benefited a little bit from the investment uncertainty brought on by the last referendum in Quebec, and uh, and so yeah, that to me is well, I think it's possible that that Alberta could have learned a lesson from that, in that let's not scare away the investors. Or the lesson could be no, let's push forward and do what we got to do anyway. I don't know. And I feel bad for people living through this because, as I've heard from many people, it's become a really divisive issue. Like some neighbors not talking to each other anymore, certain family members no longer wanting to talk to each other anymore, and that's always always a bad thing. And it makes me wonder as well, speaking of bad politics, it makes me wonder if Donald Trump will try to interfere or influence in any way this referendum or pushing people towards secession, because it seems like um, all that guy wants to do lately is pick on Canada and pick on all of our supposed allies, all of the U.S.'s supposed allies. And it would maybe serve some purpose for him to have Canada a little destabilized, right? But I don't know. And again, the ambassador, the envoy to Canada, he's part of Trump's administration. The guy who endorsed the um, voter ID app that ended up people blaming for the big leak, the big data breach, where lots of Alberta voters' data are out there in an online database. Um, that's funny. Trump needs to annex Canada. That would be funny. Well, no, I think it is funny as a comment. That's all I will say on that. Although myself is kind of, yeah, I have a hard time taking Trump seriously at almost anything he says anymore. But then again, I think we kind of have to take him seriously because first to say it like it's a joke, and then he'll end up going forward and with a policy like, and it turns out he wasn't joking at all. So I don't know. I'm a little worried about that. So yeah, I do worry that Donald Trump and at least some of MAGA might try to have some influence on this whole um, cessation referendum or anything. But I think that, well, I think that the U.S. should stay the hell out of it and let Alberta govern itself and let Canada deal with its own issues. I don't think, yeah, I would hope that the American government would stay the hell out of it because it's really, really none of our business, right? It's not, yeah, it's really something that I think Albertans should settle and Canadians should settle, and the rest of us will just have to sort of respect the outcome of all that. Anyway, that's my thoughts on that. So yeah, there you go. And I'm trying to think if there's anything. I have little notes here that I forgot to mention. Um, Yeah, no, I think I covered just about everything that I wanted to say, and again, it leaves me with the question of, well, some of the people who are really devout separatists, who are also who are also members of the United Conservatives in Alberta, uh, what if those people banded together and helped kick her out as the leader of the party, and so she wouldn't be their premier anymore. But maybe they could put in somebody who would get a real cessationist referendum on the ballot. I don't know. That's to me, that's a part of this little drama that I'm gonna keep following. I'm really interested in seeing all the fallout for all this. And right now, I'm wondering about Mark Carney. I asked a friend earlier today, do you think that Mark Carney is pissed about the announcement that Danielle Smith made last night? Excuse me again. Or do you think he's just laughing at her about it, right? Because she got herself into some real hot water. And in a way, she kind of helped light the fire. Um, because again, she helped. Well, she's the one who first tabled the legislation to make it a little easier for people to bring a citizen initiated petition for a referendum by helping push through a bill that actually lowered substantially the amount of signatures you would need to get on the petition from 20% of the registered voters in Alberta down to only 10% of the number of people who voted in the last election. So that's a much lower number, and plus it extended the time period you had to collect the signatures, but from 90 days to 120 days. So she seems to be sort of, yeah, enabling and making it easier for the separatist movement to go forward, and push forward, even though she herself says that she doesn't want Alberta to separate from Canada. So I don't know. I think she's playing with political fire here. And anyway, so yeah, that's about all I have to say on the matter. And so, personally, I wouldn't be surprised if in November, if she's out of a job for upsetting a lot of her base. That to me, I wouldn't be surprised. Although I'm not a political scientist, I do study trends in culture, and yeah, I think pretending like you're actually a separatist, but then showing that you're not eventually, that will get people to turn on you, I'm pretty sure, anyway. Um, you think she's doing a good thing and she's doing her job. Yes, she is doing her job there. I agree with that. And I don't know, this is, um, yeah, that's the big question. Is the petition that they're intending to put on the ballot, the non binding petition that is that going to be enough to appease enough voters? That is a good question. Yeah. Um, and if she is supporting the people who voted her in, absolutely. Although, um, yeah, if you're truly a separatist and you have voted her in, and now she's putting a separate question on a referendum that's just a referendum on whether we should have a referendum, I could see feeling disappointed in that. But anyway, yeah, so I think that's yeah, now I've been over everything that I wanted to say, and I've touched on the last couple points more than once, so I don't want to be repeating myself too much or forever. So I think that's a good way for this to stop. And thanks to everybody who uh, piped it in the chat with all the relevant comments. So and I do really appreciate that. Um, yeah, and anyway, yeah, I will leave it at that. And so have a good night and thanks for hanging out. And so if you're catching in this and the replay, please put in something in the comments and I will be happy to reply to you there. And if not, well, either way, whether you're watching this on the live stream or on the replay, either way, thanks for hanging out to me, and I will catch you next time. Bye bye.